We are live, we are direct with Founders Who Scale with Jeff Murphy, founder and managing member of Murphy Advisory Solutions, helping business owners and advisors unlock growth, build value, and exit successfully. Companies like Sony and a plethora of other Fortune 50 companies enroll Jeff when they need to fix their problems. Fractional CFO, M&A advisor, CPA. He brings world-class finance expertise to privately held companies and publicly held companies. Your profits will rocket like the Houston Rockets, straight out of Texas. Welcome, Jeff.
Happy to be here. What's going on, Jay?
Yeah, I'm amazing. Really looking forward to getting stuck into what you do. So, first of all, let us know, you know, what's the main things that you do for companies? Because, I'm seeing exits, M&A, mergers, like I'm seeing different things. So tell me, like, take it down to layman's terms. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so I help business owners maximize the value and the profitability of their companies. And, a lot of times that's where folks just don't realize the value drivers and what they can really do to make those work for them in the best, most efficient way. So that's essentially what it is in a nutshell, right? A business owner who doesn't feel like they're as profitable as they can be, that they don't have as valuable a company as they want to be able to sell it at some stage or be able to really manage to harvest as much of the income out of it as they can. I come in to help them out.
Wow, okay, that's brilliant. And what's your sweet spot of companies? I mean, look, speak to us about the Fortune 50 companies that you've helped. Because I know you're thinking about making your pivot and things like this, but tell us about the Fortune 50 companies.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's a very different skill set that's needed for those guys, right? They tend to already have a wealth of experience and people that are involved. And what I'm really focusing on is then bringing what the very top people are doing, be it a Warburg Pincus or a Carlyle or a Bain or some of the other private equity firms or some of those largest corporates, and making sure that that startup through that lower middle market company, the guy who's just in business is really successful in their own town or wherever they're focused on, being able to continue to grow and scale in a way that's going to take advantage of those those approaches that the big guys use, right? It's surprising how often when those guys who are at that lower level, that lower middle market and below, are looking at trying to exit, where how much money they leave on the table, right? Just because they don't know how to get their business, essentially the curb appeal, if you want to think about it like a house, you know, so that a buyer's going to pay them the maximum amount of money for it.
No, that makes sense. So it's really trying to maximize the value, how to exhibit the value, how to maybe tidy up their financial angles, that sort of thing, or to position their business.
Yeah. So for example, for a lot of those people who have, a smaller company that they're looking to really grow, a lot of their challenges sometimes are the fact that they don't realize how much value there is just in even having partners, right? Having the right team around them. For you, I mean, let's look at it through the lens maybe of even your own business, Jay. Tell me a little bit about how your business is set up.
Yeah. So, I mean, what precisely would you want to know in that regard? Yeah.
So for example, I'm talking with you, and you have this kind of company that you're talking to me, right? Who else you have doing that sort of role, right? Are you the operator as well as just the owner? So from the standpoint of a lot of owners that are also the operators, there's a lot of benefit for them just saying, listen, I just focus in on the mission, the culture, the values of my company, and I'm hiring people to do the rest of it because that's where they can actually leverage kind of the resources that they have available, right? So think about it, instead of you being limited to the number of hours in a day to be able to get this done, imagine if you had five other people that were doing this as well. So you have five times as much time to be doing this, five times as much product, five times as much, content
Amazing.
and being able to focus in on where the value could be in terms of distribution channels or anything else. So sometimes it's just that getting the dependency away from the owner and having that workforce that's able to kind of really drive what the business is doing.
No, very powerful. I've read a book called The One Thing, and it's like, what is the one thing that the business owner really excels at and is in their zone of genius, and maybe outsourcing the other things, right, that can be
Yep.
done by other people.
And there's books like Who Not What, right?
Yeah,
It's making sure that you have the right people on your team that are driving the right values that you can all be centralized around. Here's our vision. Here's what we're really bringing to our customers, and that's a powerful proposition to bring to a client, right? You don't just get Jay, you get Jay and his team.
yeah. No, that's extremely powerful. I remember my mum would always tell me that half a melon is always worth more than 100% of a grape. Where, like in terms of the mindset, is some people want to hold on to that grape, right? Like,
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. And that's part of it, right? You got the right analogy in mind as far as you want to be growing. The other analogy people hear about is like growing the pie, right? The bigger the pie is, the more that can be shared, regardless of what your slice of it is. Be focusing in on that.
100%. That makes complete sense. Tell me, what does a typical day look like for you?
So generally, it's getting up fairly early because I have clients that are basically everywhere, and it going through whatever the action plan is. Because a lot of times, what we're doing is we're talking with the business owners to understand what is their company, how do we break it down so we understand those value drivers, how do we protect what is creating value for them? Because a lot of times business owners can just enhance the value of their company by just de-risking it, right? By saying, listen, if a buyer comes in to look at this, so I'm getting that market view of what my company's worth. If I don't have, if I don't have the right form of insurance, if I don't have the right like legal protections in place for my stuff, that's going to be taking away value. So sometimes it's just protecting the existing value. So it's coming up with those plans. It's reaching out and talking to other people that are trying to get in touch with us to be able to do this work. It's going out and speaking to universities and other places where the startups and the business owners happen to be, so that they're aware of there's this type of help that I can provide to them. So it every day is a little bit different, but those are the general themes that tend to come across every single day.
Okay. That makes complete sense. We know with the latest trends happening with AI and technology, tell me, how is this affecting your business and how is this affecting your clients'
So for
businesses?
Yeah, so for AI, it affects me just in terms of it makes it another tool and another person essentially on the team that I can leverage to be doing certain things, right? So, for example, being able to gather a lot of information, being able to help put together some of the work that needs to be done for clients. A lot of times for my clients, that's part of what we're going in to look at it to see where can they leverage that sort of technology, where can they be making the most out of what tools are available through AI, and as we see AI continue to advance at a sometimes frighteningly scary pace. So part of it is making sure that they understand the implications of using it not only for themselves, but it's going to be used by their own clients, by other people in that space. So how do they make sure that they're being positioned right?
Now that makes complete sense. And what challenges have you come across in terms of maybe is AI a threat to any of the organizations that you're working with in terms of if they don't adopt, like they could lose market share or they become less relevant or
Yeah, I mean, that's always the risk, right? And the challenge for a number of companies, and I would put this kind of across the board, is that AI is going to be able to do a lot of the tasks that right now you'd think of a person being able to do, right? And so, for example, it's already working its way into most of the technology that people have, for example, with phone trees or other things that can just increase the speed at which business is done. So if you're slower than that, right, people are going to compare you to who's the alternative to be able to get me an answer. that's where you need to be prepared to either say, I give you better information, I give you more insight, I give you something that AI won't necessarily be able to do when you can type into an AI machine, the prompt and the question and get an answer. So, for example, some of the folks I work with that are in the legal field, right? They generally price things based upon an hour sort of basis. Hey, this took me 40 hours to do, so at my rate, this is what that fee is. And they have clients that are now saying, I've already Googled or I've already put into the AI kind of my fact pattern. Can you just review what it is so it's no longer a 40-hour engagement, it's a 4-hour engagement?
Wow.
Is it right? Like, is this in the ballpark? What more do you need to do to revise this? So suddenly, the 40-hour engagements become 4 hours and maybe 10 or 12 for what all they need to do. And that's obviously a quarter of what they were doing before. So they need to be thinking through their own pricing models, how they bring value to their client.
No, that makes complete sense, and understanding maybe new ways uh, of leveraging, knowing that people will have the chat GPT, the tools. And so it's almost maybe integrating that so it becomes something that they might advise people on, or maybe it's a value, because we all need things to be double checked, or certain nuances that potentially the
Yeah,
database might not pick up, correct?
yeah, correct. And it's kind of the old principles that people had before in terms of make sure that you're double and tripling something that you're ultimately going to be held responsible for. So let's make sure that we're getting that information across. So that's where I think a lot of the information that people have from AI, it's going to be something that they just need to think through. How does it fit into their process? How does it actually work to their advantage? And it's not something that people are going to be putting them at a competitive disadvantage with.
No, that makes complete sense. Um, I'm a great fan. You mentioned Who Not How, written by Dan Sullivan. I've also read his 10x is easier than 2x
Yeah. Yeah.
analogy. Yeah. So, following those lines, 10x is easier than 2x. So, what two things that have you found in the business can unlock 10x growth rather than linear 2x growth? Like,
So a real simple one is making sure that everyone's on the same page with the same understanding of like what the processes and the procedures and getting the things well documented, right? That's one thing I mentioned to pretty much most of my clients is that they need to make sure that if they weren't there, that they would be able to have someone replicate what the value drivers are, right? And a lot of times, especially, and I'm focusing now because right now a lot of my time and attention is on that startup through that lower middle market, which I feel is kind of the overlooked aspect of business a lot of times. A lot of times for those folks, it's just getting out of that operator mindset and saying, how would I tell anyone else to go ahead and actually do this so I can be not intimately involved with the process to make it work? So that's one of the main things right there that I tell everybody is make sure you have well documented processes that are in place that can be addressing the dependencies that people run into, right? And then the other thing is just making sure that there is a broad view of don't get so fixated that you have an individual supplier, an individual customer, concentrating all of your time where you then run the risk of if something happens with them, you're out, right? You're on your butt because you've depended so much on them. So those are the couple things that just right away, I think when we start talking to clients and talk about how they can add value, it's those things, that both are protecting some of the value that they've already created, but then also helping them to build a platform to take it to the next level.
none of that makes sense. And by doing those types of things, you're creating a real business that becomes a sellable asset, correct? Rather
Correct.
than,
And that's the main thing for a lot of business owners is if they take a step back and were to say, if I were talking to anybody else in this situation, would I say that they actually have a business or is this just a job for them? Or in some cases, it's even just like a hobby, right? Like if you're not focused in on your numbers, how am I increasing my profitability? How am I increasing the financial side of my business? first of all, you're probably at that point only with a hobby, right? Hobbies are the things you do for fun where you don't care if you make money or not. The the next level up is that job essentially, and a lot of businesses that are just the solopreneur or that person that is the owner that is also the operator and they're doing everything, it's really just a lifestyle business for them, right? It's a job that they've done to pay their bills. A business is something that you can basically say, listen, I'm the owner, I'm living in some other place, or I'm not having to actually be on site to get all this done because I've built up my systems, I've built up my workforce, I've built up the things that can run this independent of me, which is what any buyer, when we advise companies in terms of not only the sell side strategy for that, but we'll also talk to them about, do we want to buy a company because we can add to your scale that way if we do it right? It's that, are you able to do this without key people that are there, right? Can you replicate their success because you know what their secret formula is that you can be applying for yourself?
Okay. Yeah. That makes complete sense. Hobby, job, business owner.
Yeah, that's generally, and a lot of times that's the path that people sometimes follow, right? It's you having your corporate job working for whoever it might be. Let's say it's the Royal Bank of Scotland or Lloyd's TSB or something, right? And on the side, you're advising people as a consultant. It might be more of a hobby just because you like doing that sort of thing until you're able to see that you can make some money off of it to support yourself and your own bad habits or whatever you need to support. And then you raise it up to the fact where you have, a workforce that's able to do it all. And you're just like, listen, I'm here to collect the profits that are coming out of the equity that I built in the business. So the more you're intentional and you know exactly what it is that you want to be doing there, the quicker you can get to that business where people are going to then be saying, hey, I want to pay Jay a multiple of what his company is making on an EBITDA or some other metric that they find important. And then you're able to actually cash out and do the things you want to do with the wealth that you've generated.
No, makes sense. I can see why these Fortune 50 companies pay you the big bucks.
Well, they've paid me the big bucks, and I'm happy for that. They've been all great experiences, and that's where I'm trying to bring all that to that lower middle market and the folks that are really focusing on doing that same stuff for themselves, for their own local communities. I'm a big believer in that business owner, active citizen sort of mentality of being a real part of your community, and businesses are a big part of that. Business owners who are able to contribute and live the values and do the stuff that they want to see in their communities are the folks that we want to help.
That's the punchline. In 12 months, where do you want to be? What's the big goal? Like in 12 months' time, I catch you at a Houston Rockets game next year, and you're smiling. You're smiling from ear to ear. Why is that? Like you mentioned that the
just
goal got hit.
continuing,
Yeah.
just continuing to be doing what we do for more and more customers and having them realize the secrets to success that the big guys have that they can be doing too.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we want to make sure that everybody is able to maximize their potential and maximize the value of their business, value and profitability. That's what we
Wow.
want to be doing. We want to keep doing it more and more and more.
Yeah, and hopefully I can see more podcasts and more books and more because the way you break things down is very powerful, Jeff. 100%.
Yeah, thank you. We try to make sure that it's something that everybody can understand and they're being educated and they know how to do this and incorporate it into what they're doing.
100%. What's the biggest challenge to you serving these people? Like, what's the biggest roadblock for you?
Like a lot of our clients, it's finding the best people that can be carrying our kind of our mission, our values forward, and being able to provide the services that we do.
Okay.
A lot of times, we're able to address that by having people that are in very tailored, narrow niches. Right? We have our bookkeepers, our tax accountants, our wealth advisors, all the different folks that can come in and help address kind of that business owner's needs. And it's just continuing to find great people that we can be working with to do all the mission and what we're trying to do with our business owners.
That makes complete sense. What you do in your downtime for hobbies and how do you relax? Apart from reading books, I see a lot of books there and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I'm a big reader. I love to continue to educate and learn myself. I love traveling with the family. We try to go places not only around Texas where we are, but around the U.S. In the past, my wife and I have lived in London for 5 years. We've lived
yeah.
overseas in
Whereabouts in
Tokyo,
London?
and we're working with
Yeah.
Japan, like with Sony in Japan.
Oh wow,
We like to be able to, you
nice.
know, travel and just see all sorts of the world and read and relax and be on the beach, be in the mountains, be wherever we're gonna have a good time with family and friends.
No, that makes sense. Well, whereabouts were you in London? Whereabouts? North?
Um, I'm sorry, say that again.
Were you in North London or South or Central?
So fairly central. So at that point, it was working right around Covent Garden,
Oh,
and
Covent Garden. Okay.
yeah, we're talking the Circle Line sort of places.
Oh, okay, okay. Circle line,
In
yeah.
Japan, it was kind of similar. A lot of it was being in places where you were mentioning the Fortune 50, working where those guys were. Um, so it was, yeah. I find having lived overseas, especially that being able to learn how different cultures approach things to be effective and efficient and kind of achieving what they need is great because you get to see things that are out of your normal everyday approach. So it's one of the things that we like to even bring with to our clients as far as some of those things is that viewpoint of let's just focus in on what the results are and then we can figure out the right way to get there that's going to match up with what your values are
Wow.
because maybe the way you're doing it, if we tweak it slightly to take an approach that might not be as familiar to you, but I promise you, people elsewhere do things in this way and they find great success. We'll see what we can do, right? So make that a competitive advantage where you're not just doing the exact same thing everyone else in your industry or in kind of where you are is doing it.
Wow. Jeff, I think you got the perfect blend of IQ and EQ.
I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading the book, why EQ, emotional intelligence, why EQ is more important than IQ. And it's just the ability to empathize and have that self awareness of, okay, here's my gifts. This is where I want to go, and here's where that person might be struggling, but this small tweak can completely change the game. And I'm sure you're aware of the book, The Ikigai. You've heard of the concept. I'm guessing you have Ikigai.
You know, tell me a little bit more about it. I may, and
Ikigai, yeah, it's the Japanese concept of matching your passions
yep.
and yeah, and your loves, but what the world needs and what you can be paid for, so you're not the starving artist.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where a lot of it is being able to take that 360 view, right? Like you were mentioning a moment ago with the EQ side of it. I think a big part of that is being able to step into that client's shoes to be able to understand, well, tell me more about what you're trying to achieve. Tell me what's important to you. How do we actually help you achieve that? And what's going to be in line with your values? Because you don't want to have people be uncomfortable with what you're telling them. So part of it's educating them. Part of it's getting up to the point where they can achieve some growth in their own potential that way. So yeah, no, I think that's a great way of kind of looking at that and being able to then say, knowing what you're trying to achieve and how we can help you out with that. Yeah, this is where it's a great matchup with, okay, here's where there's going to be more value for something that you're still doing and you're just not aware of it, right? There's, oh, you've asked a great question and inspired some really great thoughts, I think, in terms of some of this. But, for example, part of it's even just I've had clients where we've been talking to them and it's like, you're 95% of the way there. And if you just switch who you're looking at, so for example, instead of the residential customer, you're looking at like their corporate customer instead. That's where you're going to find the most value and the most growth of this stuff. So let's try to get you matched up there.
Yeah, which is why I think the whole skill of coaching, like business coaching,
Yeah.
is key. Not just, hey, here's a drag and drop strategy, or here's one I made earlier. No, but it's like Yeah, this is where you are right now, and this is the correct pivot. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure to connect today. Let them know who precisely you help and how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, so I help business owners between startups and that lower middle market, which we define as up to $50 million US. And we help them out by really diving into their business to understand the value drivers and how they can maximize their value and profitability so that they can live the best life that they can through harvesting that wealth that they've spent so much time, toil, sweat, tears, their life to create.
Yeah. Very impressive, um, powerful speaking, and really great to connect with you today, Jeff.
Great talking with you, Jay.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Whoa.